It started on Saturday, October the 3rd, 2020, with a video from Ughelli, Delta State. The footage showed officers from the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS, allegedly shooting a young man and driving off in his vehicle. Within hours, outrage spread across social media. The hashtag #EndSARS began trending once again, a campaign that had existed since 2017, calling for the disbandment of the notorious police unit accused of extortion, torture, and extrajudicial killings. 2 days later, another story deepened public anger. In Port Harcourt, 20-year-old musician Daniel Chukwueke, known as Sleek, was reportedly shot dead by SARS officers while trying to flee. Eyewitnesses said Sleek had been sitting outside a hotel with a friend when the officers approached. As they ran, shots were fired. Sleek was killed and his friend was arrested.
By Thursday, October the 8th, the outrage had moved from social media to the streets. Protests broke out across the country, from Lagos to Abuja, from Port Harcourt to Enugu. Young Nigerians, joined by activists and celebrities, demanded justice and reform. Their message was clear: end police brutality. But security agents cracked down on the demonstrations, firing tear gas, using water cannons, and in some cases, live ammunition. In Ogbomoso, Oyo State, Jimoh Ishak was killed during one of the protests. Despite the crackdown, the movement grew stronger. By October the 14th, protests were ongoing nationwide, with demonstrators calling for accountability and lasting reform of the Nigerian police force. But on October the 20th, 2020, at the Lekki Toll Gate in Lagos, events took a darker turn. Security forces opened fire on peaceful protesters who had gathered under the national flag, singing the anthem. A judicial panel would later confirm that army and police officers shot, injured, and killed unarmed citizens that night.
Now, 5 years later, the #EndSARS protests remain one of the most significant youth-led movements in Nigeria's history. A moment that challenged power, demanded justice, and forced the nation to confront the failings of its policing system. Today, we revisit that movement, how it began, the 5 demands that defined it, the judicial panels that followed, and the question that still lingers 5 years on: what has changed and what hasn't? Welcome to this #EndSARS protest 5 year after special. I'm Tolulope, Adeleru-Balogun.
And I'm Gbenga, Aborowa. Over the next 2 hours, we'll walk you through the demands carved in youth banners to the corridors of official inquiry. We'll ask hard questions. How have the panels delivered? As reform taken root, do Nigerians feel safer, more respected, more heard? This isn't just a retrospective. It's a mirror held up to a nation. 5 years after #EndSARS, what has the nation done with its promise? What remains undone? We have a varied group of guests joining us this morning. Opeyemi Adeleru-Balogun, Executive Director of Enough is Enough Nigeria, joins us from the Lekki Toll Gate. We'll also have Isa Sanusi, Executive Director, Amnesty International, and Peter Aka, Human Rights Advocate, who joins us from Abuja. We'll also have Dr. Eri Yimwen Anthony, member of the #EndSARS Judicial Panel of Inquiry in Edo State. Chukwuka Osonwa, member, #EndSARS Judicial Panel of Inquiry in Anambra State. And in the studio, we have Taiwo Oweye, a legal associate at Citizens Gavel.
So what started as a call to end police brutality became one of the country's largest youth-led demonstrations, demanding justice and accountability from those in power. The protests changed national conversations on human rights and law enforcement. But for many, the wounds remain fresh and the search for justice continues. We start with this special report from correspondent Sumaya Abraka in Abuja.
The #EndSARS protest began in October 2020 as youth-led demonstration against the Special Anti-Robbery Squad accused of extortion and killings. It spread nationwide, including parts of the north, with citizens demanding an end to police brutality. The Lekki Toll Gate incident in Lagos became the defining symbol of that struggle. Judicial panels were set up across states to investigate abuses and recommend reforms. In Lagos, The panel confirmed civilian deaths at the Lekki Toll Gate, while reports from Kaduna and Kano showed about 11 deaths during smaller protests in the north.
It's unfortunate that up until this moment, there are still some people who are missing. The cases, there's so many cases, people are tracing, some people are still in jail somewhere that they cannot identify.
The panel of inquiry report that was presented to different governors and even the federal government, I am not sure any one of them have been acted on. Some of the protesters are still being held by government, especially in different parts of the country, including in Lagos.
Out of the 29 judicial panels set up nationwide, only a few states have implemented compensation, mostly in Lagos and Ekiti. A total of 295 petitions were submitted, with several notable cases bordering citizens and far-reaching recommendations finally submitted. However, many of the recommendations are yet to be implemented, with officers prosecuted despite confirmed cases of abuse.
There are a lot of violence and everywhere was scattered, the place was messed up. Everybody was crying, but it was on TV though that we were watching it because we couldn't go out, we were scared.
I just think they just changed their uniform because it's still the same persons that were in the SARS that are still in the reformed police. So I don't think anything has been done concerning the reasons the youths protested.
After the protest, although it was bloody, but at the end, there was no more SARS disturbing us as the youth again.
When you look at how changes occur in other countries, it took the youth, they started it, and gradually they actually achieved their aim. So we are not in any way trying to say violence should be promoted, but in a more legal, civil, and reasonable way.
5 years on, over 90 documented deaths linked to police brutality remain unresolved. For many Nigerians, the hashtag #EndSARS anniversary is not just about remembrance, but a renewed call for justice and lasting reform. In Abuja, for News Central, Sumaya Abubakar.
The EndSARS 5-year anniversary is not the only major event of the day. Today is also the hashtag Free Nnamdi Kanu march called for by Omoyele Sowore. Reports early this morning said that police had fired tear gas at demonstrators in Abuja. Now let's cross over live to our lead correspondent in Lagos at the scene of the Lekki Toll Plaza shooting 5 years ago. Bernard Akede, who's in standby to give us the latest update from Lekki Toll. Good morning, Bernard. Could you give us a situation report of what's happening this morning at the Lekki Toll Plaza?
Gbenga, thank you for having me. Well, yes, we are here live at the Lekki Toll Plaza, if you like to put it that way, epicenter of the EndSARS protests 5 years ago in Lagos, right here. And unfortunately, the scene of the shootings, the fatal shootings that took place on this exact day 5 years ago. Of course, as compared to how it is now, 5 years ago, Gbenga, you and I were actually here on this ground on that day. And the whole vicinity, the whole presence here was packed filled with protesters, particularly youths, Nigerian youths who were chanting songs of solidarity with placards, and I must say well coordinated as it were on that day and in those days, or rather within those days when we had the protests ongoing. Of course, it's different now. 5 years on, it's business as usual on a Monday morning here in Lagos at the Lekki Toll in VI. The only difference that you could notice is that there are a number of security operatives that usually would not be here on a morning like this, and you get to see them as the camera swings around. There are certain vans, police vans, lined up here to my right, as you can see them. And there equally was a van from the Nigerian army also that came here on surveillance and has moved away. Equally behind me on the other side of the road, you'll also get to see some police vans. If we zoom in, you'll see them clearly. In total, we have about at least 8 police vans and numerous police officers here, some armed, some in uniform and others in plain clothing, just to ensure that there's peace and security and calm, and that there's no breakdown of law and order, being today the 5th year memorial of EndSARS.
Ben, just thinking about it, as you said, yourself, Gbenga, were there. I was there as well. We had done Alausa at one point. Then we were actually at the Lekki Toll Plaza on October the 20th, 5 years ago. I left around 4 o'clock, and I'm just thinking back to the sentiment and the energy that ran through young Nigerians as they were protesting. Some had said they were protesting for their lives, that they needed a new Nigeria. But I would always remember the interview, Gbenga, I don't know if you remember, with Dr. Duncan and his doctor,
yes, he was
daughter,
on a
Dr.
bicycle,
Adeleru-Balogun. And that was an interview that went viral. And we had spoken to him, and he talked about wanting to protest because they had protested when they were younger. And then he wanted to support his grandson and other young Nigerians. When you look at it's 5 years on, and it barely seems to be something that anybody's remembering. Even on the front pages of newspapers today, the SARS is barely a blimp in terms of the 5-year memorial. Ben, what do you think about that?
Tolu, I think, and you may, I stand to be corrected, but I think strategically, it's a, would I say it's a plan basically for the whole thing to be forgotten and for life to basically move on, as it were, for the fact that it's not really being talked about, it's not being emphasized. As time goes on, things that we don't mention so much, things we don't talk about so much, things we don't put in the forefront will eventually fade into time. And I think that's what's happening to the SARS memorial. Now, I'm not saying that we should always remember the fact that there were, that there were huge protests, that there possibly were killings, people lost their lives. But we should remember that young Nigerians came out to fight for a change. You know, it's something that we may not see again in our own lifetime. It's something that people of our age, our own age brackets, basically decided to take up the mantle and decided to. Oh, you could say, of course, not entirely. Earlier this morning, I read out the 5-for-5 agenda, and I think I'll do that again, just for clarity's sake. The 5-for-5 agenda that the protesters put forward after the shootings here, and what they wanted to change from SARS, ranging from police brutality to the disbandment of SARS. And as I mentioned, I'll try to read that again if I can get it. Basically, so these, the things that they fought for were not just for the brutality that Nigerians, particularly young Nigerians, were witnessing as at the time, but also for changes in the way things were happening in Nigeria. I have it now, and I'll read through. Now, the 5-for-5 were as follows. First of all, an immediate release of all arrested protesters. Secondly, justice for all deceased victims of police brutality and the appropriate compensation for their families. Number 3 was setting up an independent body to oversee the investigation and prosecution of all reported police misconduct within the period of 10 days. The 4th was carrying out psychological evaluation and retaining of all, probably was they went to say detaining of all, or retaining maybe, of all disbanded SARS operatives before they can be deployed, and that this should be verified by an independent body. And finally, the claim was that the government should increase police salaries and that they should adequately compensate, they should be adequately compensated for protecting lives and property of the citizens. Tolu, I'll leave this question open-ended. Do you think all these points have been met 5 years down the line? These were the things that young Nigerians were protesting for. If anything has changed, your guess is as good as mine.
The verdict is out there. Just before we let you go, Bernard, you've covered protests in the past 5 years, and bad governance is one, and several other protests. And the SARS protest really did change the face of civil demonstrations in Nigeria. How would you say the Nigerian police has fared in terms of handling of demonstrations since then? Because the government has become extremely paranoid. They always make reference to the SARS incident, saying, oh, do you want to destroy property like we witnessed? So there are court orders that prevent demonstrations from happening and all of that. But how would you assess the behavior of the Nigerian police? Do you think that lessons have been learned here?
Gbenga, if I hear you clearly, you're talking about how the police has handled protests so far between then and now, 5 years.
Yeah.
Yes, I have covered several protests across the country. And I'll say, well, in the past 5 years, and I'll speak for Lagos first of all, we've seen an improvement with the way the police has been handling protests over time. There used to be a time when the moment you mount your camera, and it's happened to us here, the first day of the End Bad Governance protest, if you do remember, live on camera when we were accosted by some officers who wanted to stop us, from carrying out our duties as journalists to start with, and then talk about as protesters, the moment people gather, even when there's nothing against them protesting, as we know it is the right of the citizens, you get to see some security operatives at some point accost them and try to stop them from doing that. And then at some point you see the use of force, more often than not deployment of canisters of tear gas, and like you read in that monologue, sometimes even live rounds of ammunition. But in Lagos, things have improved, I must say. Not significantly, but things have improved, and it's something to appreciate, particularly under this current Commissioner of Police, who has been quite friendly with the press and tried to make peace, basically. But of course, in every group, there will be some persons who will be overzealous, and as I mentioned earlier today, trigger happy sometimes, where the moment they see protesters, rather than engage in dialogue, it's feisty and physical and quite offensive. We are looking forward to a period where there will be more use of dialogue than physical force, where there will be more understanding between protesters and the police than, open confrontation. Yes,
yes, apologies for interrupting. We need to put you on hold for now. I know that the executive director of EIE is coming to join you at the toll gate, so we'll be taking her conversation with us there. But we also want to touch base in other areas around the country, so do be on standby. I will be back with you in just a bit. So let's keep this conversation going. As Gbenga said earlier, today is also momentous because of the Free Nnamdi Kanu march that has kicked off across the country. And as Ben was talking about tear gas and dialogue, well, we can tell you that our correspondents in Abuja, at least two of them, have been victims of tear gas this morning because of the police attempting to disperse the marchers. But we're going to go to other places of the country because as calls for Free Nnamdi Kanu intensify in the capital, the southeast region is once again showing firm solidarity. But how is the wave of agitation unfolding across states? Now, to unpack the situation on the ground, we have our correspondent, Chinwe Ughelli, who is live in Abia State with the latest updates and eyewitness accounts on the growing mobilization there. Chinwe, good morning to you.
Good morning, Tolu.
So, Chinwe, tell us how things look on the ground. We have seen how things are happening right now in Abuja with tear gassing. It appears to be massive police blockades and traffic for residents of the capital city. But where else? Because particularly the Free Nnamdi Kanu situation and conversation is one that is quite important and momentous here, or rather in the southeast. So what do things look like where you are?
Okay, there's no protest going on in Abia State, especially the state capital where I am. What we have actually a group of the youth council and the people who have come together to do like a march to the government house where they want to deliver a letter. What is happening in Omaha, Abia State, and of course the fact is that people have stayed back home. There's quite skeletal movement across the zone. Lots of shops are closed, schools are not open today. So the people I spoke with said that it is a solidarity that they have decided to stay home since they are not in Abuja where Nnamdi has been held to do the protest march that the only way of protesting is to stay at home and not have movement here today.
So, Chinwe, today is also the 5-year memorial, the 5-year anniversary of the SARS protest, particularly the issue and the incidences that happened on October 20th. Is there any form of memorial happening around you? Is it even something that is a part of the conversation today for those in Abia State?
Well, that conversation is not happening here. Everybody there, I do remember the SARS movement and protests took place, especially where I am standing. They started from here. This is where I went to government house and the other major part of the city. But today, that conversation is not happening. There's no form of a gathering or discourse around the SARS protest. What we have is actually called for the unconditional release of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. And I have here with me the President of the Youth Council.
Apologies, we have to move on to, thank you for that update, Chinwe Ughelli in Abia State. But we now have to move to our correspondent in Delta State, Austin Azu, for updates. Good morning, Austin. Today is like a two-in-one. It's NSAS Memorial, and there's also the Free Nnamdi Kanu protest. Can you give us a situation report of what's happening in Delta State? If there are any planned demonstrations, what's the security situation like also?
Started here in Delta State about 5 years ago, and it started in Ughelli, whereby a young man allegedly accused the police of manhandling one of them, and thereafter raised an alarm that ignited the movement across the country. Subsequently, the young man was arrested by police, and thereafter he was paraded. But what came out after the parade is what we cannot ascertain. So today is a memorial or the remembrance of the NSAS movement across the country. And this is one of their converged centers here in Asaba, where most of them converged here to demonstrate and protested against what they perceived about the government and that of the Nigeria police. Okay, we have the police here stationed here. The police, if my cameraman can do me a favor, he will do a panning and get to where the police are stationed to ensure that nobody comes to this particular spot here to protest. And not only that, they are armed and they are stationed with a vehicle to ensure that anyone who comes here will be arrested. So beyond that, every other person seems to be going about his lawful duties. You can see vehicular movements in and out of the state capital. Of course, Asaba is a gateway to the southeast, and it is obvious that a lot of movement ought to be taking place today. But nevertheless, because of the sit at home, we have some few vehicles on the road, unlike what we used to have in some other dates. So by and large, the state capital is quite cool, and other parts of the state as well. We have not gathered any information regarding what is happening in Ughelli, Warri, Sapele, and other metropolitan areas of the state capital. But we hope to give you more updates if we have any information regarding that. But nevertheless, police have started doing show of force regarding this issue of Free Nnamdi Kanu movement, and then coincidentally is happening alongside that of the NSAS memorial. So it means that the police are using one stone to kill two birds. But nevertheless, everyone seems not to be quite concerned about that movement anymore, about the NSAS memorial, because a lot of persons actually got wounded. Particularly at this point here, if my cameraman could do me a favor, there are a lot of arson that were carried out here. We have, there was a popular spot at this coca interchange that was gutted by fire, and thereafter a court, that's a magistrate's court of the Delta State, was actually destroyed by the movement as well, and onward to other places within the state and within the state capital and outside the state capital. A lot of property were damaged, and thereafter, subsequently, some of this property that were damaged has not even be fixed properly. We don't know if they are going to serve as a monument, but nevertheless, some of one of the courts was built by the immediate past governor, and some of the property that were destroyed in terms of beautification of Asaba, those places that were destroyed, just recently that they started building another multi-purpose center in that area. But by and large, the memory of the NSAS movement still lingers in the minds of some individuals, particularly those who sustained injury. There were people who were arrested for arson, and some people cannot just forget that horrible movement, because within that period of that NSAS movement, all economic activities in the state capital and environs were grounded, because a lot of persons have to spend days on the road, and besides that, some individuals who were like what the police would describe then as disgruntled elements, took advantage of the NSAS movement and started using it to commit heinous crimes, and some people were boggled, and so on and so forth. So the memory will still linger in the minds of those who experienced that NSAS movement. So in Asaba and environs here in Delta State, the area is quite calm. The police have taken over most of the strategic places that was used for the convergence or the gathering point for the movement here in Asaba and environ, and there's ongoing show of force by the Nigeria police regarding the Free Nnamdi Kanu movement across the country. So back to you in the studio, Gbenga.
Thank you so much, Austin. We'll touch base with you again later to see how things are playing out. Now, we have the executive director of the Amnesty International Nigeria standing by to join our conversation, as well as Taiwo Owoye, who is a legal associate with Citizens Gavel, as we continue to look at 5 years after the SARS protest. But very quickly, let's go back to Abuja, where we have our two correspondents standing by to give us updates on the Free Nnamdi Kanu march. Sagir Ibrahim and Aishat Salihu are joining us now. Let's get these updates in to see how things are shaping up or not in Abuja. Sagir, I hope you've recovered from the tear gas. Can you give us a situation report of where you are? Let viewers know where you are and what things are looking like now. It was a video of the encounter of a young Nigerian with officers of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad in Ughelli, Delta State, that renewed outrage in how young Nigerians, particularly young men, were profiled, harassed, and even more by police that many called the match that ignited the flame of the SARS protest. We've spoken to our correspondents in Delta State, and we continue the conversation now, joined by special guests. But very quickly, let's go to Abuja. We want to give you updates on what's happening there at the Federal Capital Territory, of course, with the Free Nnamdi Kanu march that has apparently not necessarily turned violent, but turned questionable. There have been tear gas dispersed to disperse the marchers at different points across the Federal Capital Territory. Good morning. Let's hear what's happening where you are right now. All right, so we'll try to get back to our Abuja correspondent in just a moment. But joining us right now, we have Isa Sanusi. He is the Executive Director of Amnesty International Nigeria. We also have joining us for this conversation to represent a legal associate with Citizens Gavel, and her name is Taiwo Owoye. Taiwo, good morning to you. Mr. Sanusi, thank you as always for answering our call and for joining this conversation.
Thank you very much for having me this morning.
All right, Gbenga, over to you.
Now, I'll start with Dr. Sanusi. Amnesty International, the organization you represent, was among the first to document the Lekki Toll shooting in real time. 5 years later, what's your assessment of how Nigeria has handled the truth of that night? Have we atoned for the mistakes we made? Have we officially entered the era of amnesia by design?
So it looks like Dr. Sanusi's technical connection to us is broken. I know he'll be back very shortly. So Taiwo, let's come to you in the studio. You have worked, Citizens Gavel has worked from the very beginning with SARS protesters. Yes. You're still working with some who have cases associated through the SARS protest. You were also part of the judicial panel of inquiry that took place here in Lagos. When we look at the protest overall and the government response to it, and the fact that there are those who are arrested for simply trying to tell government, stop killing us, get your men in order. And we're 5 years down the line, and it feels like not even a blimp, not on front pages, not an attempt to even, I wouldn't say necessarily gather, because we know how that would look, but even to remember what brought us all here. What do you think about that?
Well, looking at the past 5 years, looking at from the case's perspective, I would say there is no case courts ongoing that let's just say protesters that were handpicked during protests that are still in court or in custody. However, we still have some linked up cases to these protests. We have some persons that have been arraigned for different offenses, but they are still in a way linked to the SARS case.
Dr. Sanusi is back with us. Dr. Sanusi, it's a very momentous day for us here in Nigeria. October 20th, 2025, 5 years down from the SARS protest. But it feels like there's even no attempt to have national conversation on what the country may have learned or not from the protest. What do you make of that? We were at the toll gates with our correspondents silence. Alausa, silence. Silence even in Abuja as they focus on the Free Nnamdi Kanu march that's happening there. What do we make of the fact that 5 years on from something that was the largest youth-led demonstrations that Nigeria has ever seen, it almost feels like it's complete crickets?
Well, it is so unfortunate that this country is not ready for this kind of conversation. And we can clearly see that everyone is trying as much as possible to make everyone to forget about today. Ironically, today we are also having peaceful protests taking place in Abuja and other places. SARS should not be forgotten. Even if they try to make us to forget it, we should never forget it, because it's a milestone in the history of human rights in Nigeria. And we believe that the atrocities that happened, especially on the 20th of October in Alausa and Lekki Toll Gate, are something that are extraordinarily full of lessons for us about the danger of violent crackdown on protesters. If you remember very well, since after SARS, a lot of effort have been going on by political actors and their sidekicks to change the narrative, to revise the whole SARS. Some even claim that it has political undertone. Some even accuse other political actors of doing it. But we know that it was a natural movement. It was a natural protest that was the result of years and years of injustice by the police, corruption by the police, torture by the police. Therefore, we have to continue talking about SARS. And I have to say that even up to last year, I think it was last year that we confirmed that all those arrested as a result of SARS were released. And many people were missing since the 20th of October 2020. They have not been found. Many people were injured. Many people were severely injured and incapacitated. And there was no compensation, no justice for them. Therefore, the conversation is still going on, and the wound is still fresh as far as we are concerned.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sanusi. Taiwo, Dr. Sanusi mentioned justice as he closed this submission there. Your organization provided legal aid to some of the victims of the SARS protest, and you were very active in the Lagos Judicial Panel of Inquiry. The panel reported about 48 verified cases of police brutality. Can you walk us through your experience and what happened to those victims that you represented?
Okay, I will start from when they were actually arrested. So some victims were arrested during SARS. So our citizens gathered. What we did was just to station ourselves at different police stations. So immediately, once they're arrested, we look for a way of securing their bail from the police custody. So after a while, when this panel was set up, we also represented like 13 to 15 victims who were also part of the panel. And at the end of the day, they were awarded 53 million naira. And I can say they have all been paid.
Collectively?
No, individually. There's some that was awarded 10 million naira. There was a particular person that was awarded 10 million naira. The person, because he had injury, I think he was shot on his neck or something, and some not up to that amount. But collectively, the amount was 53 million naira. If I'm not mistaken. So, Dr. Sanusi, when we look at this, young Nigerians came out to protest, to say this is what has been happening to us. Because even before the events of October 2020, the hashtag #EndSARS had been trending, had become part of a campaign, I think, around 2017. And you would see occasional videos in which Nigerians would share their experiences, particularly either of police brutality or particularly with the Special Anti-Robbery Squad. And at the end of the day, it was a surprise to many people to find out that as of even 2023 and I think late last year, there were still some people who were in prison or in jail across this country due to the SARS protest. I want to talk about that very quickly. So January 10th, 2023, 9 protesters were released from Agodi Correctional Center in Ibadan after 10 years. May 24th, 2023, the Senate had also considered a bill for compensation to victims and businesses affected. It was also July 2023 that the Lagos government admitted mass burials of bodies from protests and community clashes. Then you also had, of course, the release of more individuals. But when we look at
picking up protesters, keeping them, not taking them to court. Doesn't this just prove the reason that young Nigerians, or Nigerians in totality, were protesting throughout October 2020? This overreach, this abuse of human rights, this abuse of judicial processes that has become part of what we see as an enabling factor around police brutality and abuse.
These things, we realize that a lot of people were held without trial, in fact, many of them were held without even, the authorities could not produce any charge against them, and they don't want to release them. And at the end of the day, they ended up spending years unlawfully and without any backing of law, detained for many years. So what this is showing is that the Nigerian authorities are yet to learn the lesson from SARS, and the fact that concerted efforts were made to make sure that these guys remain in detention or forgotten, and justice is not being given to each one of them, shows that we are still far away from what we wanted to achieve with SARS. We are still getting reports of police brutality from time to time, even though SARS was disbanded. But the atrocities have not completely gone away. They are still with us. And I believe that all these issues have to be addressed. I believe that there is still need for fresh accountability around SARS. The injustice is so huge and big, to the extent that just the panels that were held in a few states, including Lagos, are not enough. I think we should have a national, thorough, effective, independent investigation of what happened throughout SARS. And I want to also mention that we have to bear in mind the fact that the first Amnesty International report on police brutality in Nigeria was issued in 2004. And we issued another report in 2009. We did another one in 2016. And we did another one in 2020. So these things have been going on, and authorities have been ignoring them until they reached the tipping point, which was what led to the SARS nationwide protest. But our major concern is the fact that not much has changed about the right to peaceful protest, about the security agencies respecting people's right to protest, as your reporters are just reporting about using tear gas. Tear gas is lethal, and they are using it on some people that are peacefully protesting and calling for the release of Nnamdi Kanu. So these are some of the issues that we have to be talking about. We have to continue amplifying and remembering the people that were killed during SARS protests.
So, Dr. Sanusi, very quickly on that, I want to ask what seems to be an obvious question. Why is the government ignoring? You've listed at least 4 reports that Amnesty International has done into police brutality, and it doesn't just cover the police. I've read some of the reports that also indicate security agencies as well as non-state actors, but focusing on the police, you've listed at least 4 reports that Amnesty International has, of course, released on this issue. Why do you think the Nigerian government, because government is a continuum, continues to ignore the issues? Is it by design? Is it actually achieving an aim that is not for the people, but for those in power?
One of the reasons why we believe is that because some majority of the victims of these police atrocities and brutality are people from the lower rung of the society, are people from lower social background and a social economic background, are people from poor families. So one of the reasons why we believe the government is not serious about this thing is the fact that it doesn't affect them. Anything that affects Nigerian big men, it will be dealt with, it will be solved. There is no problem that cannot be solved as long as it affects Nigerian big men. But because these atrocities affect only people who are from poor background or living in poverty, people from informal settlements and all that, because that is where the brutality is much higher. Our investigation shows that the brutality type people who are from lower part of the society, who are not rich. So that is why you see this thing going on and the authorities don't care about it. It's just that like the situation we have now, every state is building airports in Nigeria, even though all those states building airports have the worst roads on earth. But because the leaders are not using those roads, therefore they don't even care. They were bad. Even if you send them the pictures, they don't understand. So that is exactly what is happening with NSAS. And another important thing is that authorities always use fear and force to intimidate people and force them into submission to tyranny and oppression. And that is why they find that when the police are brutal, are reckless with power, that is good for their own power, and that is good for their own sense of sovereignty over the people. And we believe that this is wrong because in democracy, the power belongs to the people, not to the people in power.
Thank you, Dr. Sanusi. I'd like to come to Taiwo in the studio. Dr. Sanusi's damning report on the Nigerian police, he says, unfortunately, we haven't learned a lot. I want to ask you about your assessment of the Nigerian police in the last 5 years. They will disagree and tell you that, look, SARS, as it was constituted then, has been disbanded. So they listen to the people. They'll also tell you that, 13 of the people that Citizens Gavel represented in the NSAS judicial panel have been compensated. And they'll also tell you that there are dedicated lines to complain about police brutality and police conduct. So is Dr. Sanusi's assessment a fair assessment, or what has your experience and interactions with the Nigerian police been in the last 5 years since NSAS? Would you say there's a marked improvement?
I won't say there is a significant improvement, but to some extent, I think it has reduced the way they just picked people on the road. They still do it. They still would, because we still have cases, similar cases of such. They still do it, but I think they are more conscious of the fact that people can come after them to say, oh, they've started picking up some persons. However, this issue of police picking up persons and just locking them up in their custody, majorly the issue of filing case or charging them to court is not the duty of the police officers. Like you said the other time, talking about NSAS that have been in jail or custody since then. Their duty is to arrest them, probably now charge them to a magistrate court, which duty is to now remand them to the prison. Then from the prison, it is duty of the DPP, that's from the state, to now file a case against them. So it is not in a way the duty of the police officers to keep anybody in prison. But in aspect of police brutality, I can say NSAS has actually reduced their power in a way that they can't just, they are more careful on how they arrest and detain people.
All right, so we'll come back to our NSAS conversation in just a moment. As we said, it is a day where much is happening. We're headed back to Abuja right now to touch base with our correspondent, Aishat Salihu, who is in Abuja, as there has been not restriction of movement, but at least blockade of movement and tear gas and some engagement between police and marchers this morning due to the Free Nnamdi Kanu march. Aishat, can you hear us? Good morning to you.
Morning, Tolu. I can hear you.
Fantastic. So let us know which part of the Federal Capital Territory you're in right now, and give us a status report of what's going on around you, even though we're seeing some visuals on the screen, but they are from earlier this morning.
All right. Thank you so much. Well, right now I'm standing close to the bridge that is just opposite the National Mosque, and right behind me there is a police roadblock just right behind me. And if you can also see behind me, earlier this morning, due to the I would say restricted movement, because earlier the police here, they were turning most vehicles passing through this area to access parts of the town. They were turning them around, but later on they allowed them to start moving gradually. But then that alone even caused a traffic jam, or I would say an accident. Just, if you can say, this vehicle is just moving. They were earlier repairing the vehicle because it hit another vehicle right behind it. But then what I can say is that most of the people who have tried to access, movement from point A to point B, trying to get to their places of work this morning, they have not found it easy for them. I would say a lot of them didn't even envisage this happening to them today, this morning, trying to get to work. Some of them were even saying that if the police knew there was some sort of curfew or they're going to restrict movement and won't allow people to move from some parts of Abuja, they should have announced that earlier. Although where I am right now, there is no protest going on, but what is happening is that there there is some sort of police roadblock, and the movement has just been just a little bit. Some vehicles are allowed to move, and others we even have to make their way to turn around. A lot of residents here have, for the past over 2 hours now, have been unable to get to their places of work. Some are even trekking. Some have to trek because the police have blocked the road.
So interesting enough, as you talk about it, I know there was a court order that was in favor of Omoyele Sowore, who's the one who has called this march, but the police had given warnings and also said that there's certain no-go areas. So what you're telling us now is that beyond the no-go areas that the police had initially mentioned, they've found a way to restrict movement, even though it was not an official announcement of restriction of movement, but they have found a way to sort of restrict movement in other areas of Abuja. Is that correct, Aishat?
Yes. Earlier, they were even asking vehicles to turn around, but later on, they allowed, as you can see, there are some vehicles passing now. They later started allowing vehicles to move. But those who hailed cabs this morning to get to work, they had to come down from the cabs because the drivers were not allowed to pass through. So those people now have to, either wait until they're able to move, or they have to trek from one point to another, which is not even funny for them.
All right, Aisha, thank you so much. We'll come back to you as more developments come. Dr. Sanusi, I think this is a good point for us to make. We have the Free Nnamdi Kanu march that's happening, and many of us will remember, of course, that the court, I think it was late last week or sometime last week, rejected an attempt by the police to completely ban the protests. And then the police came out and said that there were some no-go areas. And now we've seen the reaction of the police, or the actions of the police this morning. Why does it seem that we're continually in a state in which the police, which is supposed to be a law-abiding, law-enforcing agency, often seems to be the one trying to deny Nigerians of their rights, the right to protest, the right to freedom of association, the right to free assembly? Once again, on a day like this, a prime example of why young Nigerians and Nigerians across socioeconomic and age demographics came out just 5 years ago.
Well, what is happening right now in Abuja is unfortunate, and we always expect this kind of thing to happen because not much has changed about the attitude of our security agencies towards peaceful protests. We know that this kind of things normally happen, especially around this time, and we are not surprised, actually, because the attitude of the Nigerian security agencies towards peaceful protests is archaic and backward and completely contrary to democratic values. They see protests as a threat, they see protests as the enemy, they see protests as opposition, they see everything negative in protests, instead of them to look at protests as a positive thing, as an opportunity to have dialogue, as an opportunity for people to engage in peaceful dissent. That is what they should be looking at protests. Unfortunately, what is going on clearly shows that not much has changed. We are hearing about tear gassing of people, and tear gas is a weapon, no matter how you look at it, because it can cause a lot of harm, especially for people who have some underlying conditions, and even those who don't have. Therefore, all these are indications that we have to have a very genuine conversation moving forward about the security agencies and those in power, because those security agencies receive instructions from those in power to do what they are doing. We have to make sure that they understand that peaceful protest is a human right. It is non-negotiable, and there is no way people should be denied that right. It's as important as the right to freedom of expression. That is not what we are experiencing right now. Therefore, we believe that change has to come, and the change has to start from us, because we have to resist this attempt to prevent us from holding peaceful protests.
Now, Dr. Sanusi, you said Nigerians, of course, the Constitution guarantees us the right to peaceful protest. And if you look at global best practices around the world, there's almost a protest in London every other weekend, and Paris, but the police does respect the citizens' rights to protest. Over here in Nigeria, the police often says they got intelligence reports of unscrupulous elements that might disrupt this protest. And hijack, exactly. That's the exact word. Or so they have a responsibility and a duty to the people to, keep the peace, thereby advising Nigerians not to protest. My question to you is, how do you draw the line between the right to protest and safety and security of the citizens?
Well, we always tell people when they are going for protests to conduct themselves peacefully and to be civil and to avoid anything that is unlawful. And what is happening in Nigeria is that on many occasions, or in majority of cases, you find out that those who end up either looting or setting buildings on fire are actually not part of the protest. In fact, from NSAS, I can tell you that we have evidence during NSAS that government vehicles were used to bring thugs from outside Abuja to attack places, to attack government offices, so that that can be used as an alibi or as a reason to crack down on NSAS protesters. In fact, we even have a video showing thugs being conveyed to the venue of peaceful protest in Abuja in government-plated USB vehicles. So whenever you see this, the issue of either vandalization or arson during protest, definitely there are people largely sponsored by people who want to sabotage the protest. And criminals also take advantage of this kind of opportunities to blend into this protest and give them a bad name. I will believe that it's not the duty of the organizers. The duty of the organizers, of course, is to ensure that it's peaceful and only those with good intentions join. But it's the duty of the authorities to make sure that anybody who came or who was there with a bad intention is fished out and treated according to the rule of law. So we know that this kind of things, like, we are afraid that the protests will be hijacked, blah, 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 are all very reasonable excuses that are always used to discourage people or to give the protest a bad name. At times, even counter-protests are sponsored. So we all know these things, and we know that all the people who come out either during NSAS or today are mostly people who are peaceful, who are civil, who want to engage according to the rule of law, and they are not interested in committing any crime. Therefore, we have to pay attention to that fact, and we have to always remember that sometimes people accuse the authorities of sponsoring people who carry out all those kind of crimes.
And Dr. Sanusi, it's interesting you talk about counter-protests, because we do have reports from our correspondents in Abuja that there is now a counter group that is against the release of Nnamdi Kanu, and they have been at the Labor Bridge in Abuja. So it almost seems like there is a game plan. There is a template in which once there are issues that seem to be anti-government or anti-administration, some people will just come up and say, no, we like this status quo. Because let's not forget that there was a protest actually in support of the SARS officials during the NSARS protest in October 2020. Taiwo, let me come back to you now.
Just before you go to Taiwo, I want to add that the counter-protest group is never dispersed with tear gas. They are allowed to, carry out their civic duties or their constitutional responsibilities. Just the irony.
And also, that's always caught on tape, absolutely. Taiwo, I want to come back to you. Dr. Sanusi mentioned when people go for protest. And while it has been a while since we've seen any form of protest to the level or to the angst, let me use that word, to the angst of the NSARS protest, people are unhappy. Nigerians are disgruntled, and oftentimes we cannot predict what might spark another demonstration or another protest. What do you think Nigerians need to know when they go to these protests, when they go to marches, when they say, I want to raise my voice because the Constitution allows me to do that, but we obviously have security agencies that are not in support of Nigerians effectively using their constitutional rights? What should they be prepared for? What do they need to know?
Well, first of all, I will advise anybody going on protest to go peacefully. That's the best way to achieve anything at all you want to achieve as a protester. Because going there with violence may trigger the police officers to use weapons on them. But if you're going for any protest, be calm. Go there peacefully to conduct a peaceful protest. And that's the essence of getting police permits. whenever you're going on
But
protest.
the Supreme Court has ruled on that.
I agree. There's a Supreme Court judgment that they don't have to get a
police permit.
But the essence of that permit is, oh, you're going with us, not to come and discard us, not to come and have the protest. But the essence of you going is to guide the protest.
And also
to protect, at least for protection. Oh, so that in case there is any other person from, let's say any other group, from any other group, that has come to disrupt the protest, then they can easily hijack those ones that want to hijack the protest. Not for them. Not the permit. The purpose of the permit is not just for them to say, oh, we want to get your approval to go for protest. No. They are going for protest for protection of the police officer, being their duty to protect the citizens.
Now, Taiwo, like I said earlier, NSAS 2020 has changed the face of protests in Nigeria. And what we've seen is a change in the way protests happen. For example, in the last End Bad Governance protest in Lagos State, the police did say, okay, you're allowed to protest, but in certain areas, like the Gani Fawemi Park, and they give you a time frame, or the Moshood Abiola Stadium in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. Is that legal? It is.
There is a section.
Are they allowed to do that?
Yes, there is a section of, I think, Public Order Act that provides for the governor of the state to describe the place, the places where protests can go on a state. Although people have been coming against it, it's not legal. They have a right of association. They can decide to stay with it. But there is an act that empowers the governor to do that.
So just more reports coming in from Abuja right now from our correspondent at Secretariat that it seems police and civilians are trading tear gas back to back close to the Secretariat. This is our NSARS Memorial live broadcast 5 years after. We're going to take a quick break. There's more conversation looking at the judicial panels of inquiry across several states, but not across the entire federation. And what is the way forward? Let's take a break. We'll be right back. Now, the 11th of October 2020, the Inspector General of Police announced the disbandment of SARS. But for many protesters, this was only the first step. The deeper issues, impunity, structural reform, the trust between citizens and those sworn to protect them remained. In parallel, state governments across Nigeria began setting up judicial panels of inquiry charged with investigating complaints about police brutality and extrajudicial killings in the wake of the protest.
These panels were tasked with hearing petitions recommending compensation to victims and making reform proposals. For instance, in Lagos State, the panel was originally given 6 months, later extended to conclude its work. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Police Force challenged the legal basis for the state-based panels, arguing that only the federal government had the authority to probe the police.
Now we're heading back to the Lekki Toll Plaza, which was the scene of the day we are commemorating now, in which, at the end of the day, civil rights groups, organizations have all implicated government in the death of civilians who were at the toll gate to protest the activities of NSARS. Our lead correspondent, Bernard Akede, is there, and we are also expecting to see Okoyemi Adeleru-Balogun, the executive director of Enough is Enough Nigeria. Okoyemi, thank you so much for joining us. You've gotten to the toll gate now. There is really nothing happening. And I'll put to you the question I put to Dr. Sanusi earlier. How do you feel about the fact that on a day as auspicious as this, it seems that Nigeria would rather move on and forget than to actually be reflective and think of what brought us here 5 years ago?
Thanks, Tolu, and thanks for having me. It's not surprising at all. It's a pattern of government and history. And so even if we take back just the Civil War, there's nothing really that we do as a country that reminds Nigerians that we did fight a civil war because we want to amplify the whole one Nigeria narrative and forget that almost 1 million people lost their lives in the eastern part of the country. Most narratives of the Biafran War are said by Igbos because they were the ones most affected, but the rest of the country chooses to move on. So it's a pattern, and we have every day from Mako 6 to OD to Ogoni 9. I mean, I think the Ogoni 9 came back in consciousness because they were recently pardoned. But it is not surprising, and that's why I'm really glad News Central is here and taking coverage. And you guys are the only media people here. So it's not until citizens come out as well to mark or to say something. I think the media also has a responsibility to remind the country of its history. NSAS 5 years ago, on October 2020 was significant. Yes, it was not the first protest. No, it was not the first time citizens were speaking. But young Nigerians came out. And on this particular day, 5 years ago, the Nigerian government decided to open fire and shoot at its citizens. So it's not something we can forget. And that's why our hashtag today is we will never forget. And we must. I mean, there's myself and my colleague Nare, who's here, who's a scholar who has been talking about this whole notion of history and why we deliberately forget and don't amplify so people can move on and don't have a reference point. Imagine this is 5 years. A child that was born 5 years ago, by the time they turn 10 in 2030, what would their understanding of NSAS be if we are not actively talking about it? And then more importantly, trying to ensure that the demands around police reform and police behavior are actually implemented.
Now, Pemi, some quick data reference here, just before I go to my question. 56 people were killed during the NSAS protests, according to Amnesty International. 48 verified victims in Lagos panel reported 2021. Only 2 out of 29 states have implemented full panel recommendations, according to SBM Intelligence. So we do recall that during the protest, the organizers had this 545 demand. 5 years down the line, how much of those demands have been met? Some of them was ending police brutality, the release of arrested protesters, and so many other things. What's your take on that?
I didn't hear you. I think I heard something about demands. Tolu was much clearer. So if Tolu could repeat the question, that would be great.
So, Opayemi, Gbenga is asking about the 5 for 5 demands, which actually, funny enough, included better welfare for the police, psychological evaluation for the police, release of protesters as well, compensation and justice for those who had been victims of police brutality. I'm aware that EIE was part of putting these 5 for 5 demands out. Give us like a report card, a status symbol on this particular situation in terms of what has been achieved since 5 years ago.
This Establishment Act 2020 has been passed, and then it has a bunch of things in it around the rights of citizens if you're arrested. So, for example, your phone should not be searched. If you are arrested by 48 hours, they either get a court order to remand you or they have to release you. Bail is free, which has been ongoing for a while. But these are just some examples. But the fact that they're in law and the reality or the lived reality of citizens are very different. That's number one. Number two, the psychological evaluation of police officers are not done, and we continue to see police officers aggressive. As the aggression has increased, the prosecution and arrest has not matched it, and all that has done is just bred impunity. So if you take what happened 5 years ago and the fact that we didn't have police officers, we had names of specific officers that were members of SARS that we asked to be prosecuted as a testament of goodwill that the police were serious about these demands. But none of that happened. There's a young lady, Obianujuilo, whose brother was disappeared by SARS in Anambra, if I'm not mistaken. She did a solo protest in front of the National Assembly. She's presented to the Citizens Public Petitions Committee at the National Assembly, but nothing has been done. So that's that on prosecution. Improved welfare. Well, I'll tell you guys to do your own study. Interview policemen and let us know if their lives have improved since NSAS. And so, again, the NSAS protest as it was then was very focused on police reform issues. And the fact that the police are refusing to even speak 5 years from now says a lot. Because if they've actually done something, they should be able to come out boldly and be able to say, yes, we learned from that protest, and these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things we have done to improve. We've seen how the police have been compromised in the Senator Natasha case. When she reports to the police do nothing. But when Senator Akpabio responds, everywhere is bedlam. The protests that you are covering in Abuja today, the police responded and said they don't have a right to protest. And so, again, it's like no lesson learned. We want to forget history, but we will not let Nigerians forget. Citizens died at this very toll gate because the Nigerian government murdered them, period.
Okay, I mean, we'll come back to you in just a moment. Just as you mentioned, the situation we're covering in Abuja now, we're going live back to Abuja, where Omoyele Sowore is marching once again. He called for the hashtag Free Nnamdi Kanu march, which is ongoing now. As we told you earlier, you are seeing right in front of you live feed from the march. We hope to talk to Sagir Ibrahim to get more information as to where they're going. But as we told you earlier, in different spots of Abuja, our journalists and citizens have been tear gassed who have taken part in this march. There is traffic as well, because apparently there has been some police restriction of access to certain areas. Let's not forget that a court did say no to a police attempt to stop this protest, and the police came out sometime last week telling us that there were specific areas that were going to be no-go. Let's see if we can get some audio from this. We can see technical issues occurring right in front of us, but let's see if we can get some audio from this, heading over to Sagir Ibrahim.
This is the situation around the Aborowa mechanics area of the FCT Abuja. The protesters have been convinced to the fact of the several attacks by men of the Nigerian police among several other individuals. I believe right about now, at the moment. You can see there's quite a number of others who are left behind. These guys here are waiting for him to come and catch up with the crowd, so they move as one force. I don't know if you can see the activity that's going on right now from the length of my camera.
Where you are specifically and where...
More protesters are coming. More demonstrators are coming.
Sagir, I'm not sure if you can hear me. We're trying to find out where you are in Abuja and where you are headed. Where is this march heading right now?
The march is going as far as they can go, because several attempts to reconvene at the city center has proven abortive. So right now we are following the mood and the trail after this. For this march, they have mentioned quite a number of times, will not stop no matter the force, no matter the use of absolute force, including the use of tear gas. They will proceed, they will keep on keeping on. They have just one demand: Free Nnamdi Kanu or nothing else. The number is increasing. The organizers of this protest have done something intelligent. They went around community, they asked representatives of individuals from the council construction to bring them out in their numbers to protest on the street. And that's the update as the situation is right there at the moment. At some moment, we have to do that I'll tell you as well. Back to you in the studio.
Sagir, thank you very much. We'll continue to touch base with you, and I believe he will be speaking with Omoyele Sowore in just a bit. But I want to go to Dr. Sanusi because we've held him for so long, but I'd like to get his final thoughts on the conversation. I'd like to go to Dr. Sanusi.
We'd like to hear Dr. Sanusi's final take before we let him go. Just from the visuals we saw in Abuja, you could tell that they've moved away from the city center. Just looking at the topography and the area there, that the police has actually achieved its goal of moving them away from sensitive areas like the Shehu Shagari Road, Eagle Square, the Nigerian Parliament, the National Assembly, and of course Aso Rock, that they said were out of bound to protesters. So you've seen the numbers increase significantly from the earlier visuals that we saw, because from what we can see, the topography of the area, it doesn't look like the city center. It looks like they've moved them to other areas. Yeah.
All right, let's try to get to Dr. Sanusi once more. Dr. Sanusi, we're going to get into the judicial panels of inquiry, but we do want to free you, and we appreciate the time you always give us to have these conversations. But as we look forward, 5 years later, it seems like a memory wipe, like many Nigerians are getting amnesia or attempting to forget. And I don't blame them in some ways. 2020 October was quite traumatic. We covered it as journalists. We saw people, we spoke to people who shared their stories of police brutality, family members who had lost people to police brutality, who had, as Okoyemi Adeleru-Balogun said, had been disappeared even before the protest. And it seemed to just be so traumatic that without progress, people just want to say, you know what, let's just move on. Let's take it one day at a time. Dr. Sanusi, what do you think about that? And as we look forward to the potential of the other protests, let's not forget that youth-led demonstrations have toppled governments in recent times. You have the situation in Nepal, in Peru, Madagascar. You're seeing what's happening in Chile. You're seeing young people rise up across the world. Is our government, are our politicians and political leaders taking notice of what is happening? Are they prepared for a future that's coming when young Nigerians will probably say enough is enough?
Thank you so much for taking your time to put a lot of airtime to this very important day. Brief, I would like to say that our leaders have to listen to the people. I think that's the most important thing. It is not just our duty to them when they want to address the nation or they want to address the National Assembly. They expect us to listen to them. They also have to listen to us. They have obligation to listen to us. And protest is a means of communication between the people and their leaders. And what these protests are saying is that listen to us. We have a grievance, we have a proposal, and we are saying that you should listen to us. And they are not saying that give us money or let us share part of your power with us. What they are saying is that listen to us and listen to what we are saying. I believe that our leaders have to start having a new perspective, a new understanding, new approach to protest. Peaceful protest is not a crime, is not opposition party, is not attempt at insurgency, is not attempt to topple your government or whatever. It is just a means of communicating strong opinions in a peaceful, organized, civil way that is respected and protected by the rule of law, Nigerian constitution, and international law. I believe that should be the beginning. And about answers, we have to continue talking about it. Many people are still missing. The people don't know, but many people are still missing. And their dead bodies have not been discovered up to today. Therefore, we have to continue talking about it. Even though some states have had some panels and some kind of justice has been done to some people, but that is not enough. I think we need a truthful investigation, independent investigation of whatever happened during SARS, because a lot of truths have to be discovered and a lot of atrocities have to be exposed. And those policemen who are found to have committed atrocities should not just be transferred out of where they committed the atrocities. They have to be brought to justice. We believe that is the beginning and that is the change that we are looking forward to. And I call on the Nigerian authorities to allow people to protest peacefully. The protest going on today is just ironically that we are talking about this and this is what is happening. Already we received reports of people have been arrested and there was reckless use of tear gas. That is unacceptable. And I hope that the authorities will listen to the people.
All right, Dr. Sanusi, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for staying with us throughout this conversation with all the breaking news that's happening, and we appreciate your insights into this. We'll be joined by two more guests in just a moment who are members of judicial panels of inquiry across the country. But Taiwo, I want to come to you. We're seeing all of this happen, really play out in real time. And interestingly enough, again on today, October 20, 2025, 5 years after the SARS protest, the judicial panels of inquiry gave compensation, gave recommendations. But do you think that justice has actually ever really been served from the issues that came up from the SARS protest?
In terms of compensation?
Beyond compensation, because Dr. Sanusi was just talking about police officers not being moved, but being forced to take accountability, facing the law if they have in fact committed crimes against Nigerians.
Well, I wouldn't say the justice has been done, because when you talk of justice, justice is not just one-way traffic. When you're talking about justice, it's justice for the victims, justice for the society as a whole, and then also probably justice for the defendants, as those were involved in abusing the fundamental rights of citizens. So when you're talking about compensation, yes, they have been paid. But in terms of recommendations, I doubt if everything has been carried out.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room. The reason why we're even here in the first place is because of the conduct of this huge institution that has carried on since colonial times, Nigerian police force. And people often argue that maybe you should remove the force at the back of their name. Just recently, they celebrated Customer Service Week. I don't know when we became their customers, but anyway, that's on the side. If you could recommend reforms for the Nigerian police force, for it to be more responsive to its citizens, for it to provide services of protecting and serving Nigerians, what sort of recommendations would you prefer from your interaction and interfacing with the Nigerian police force on a regular basis as a result of the work you do?
From my own personal interactions with Nigerian police, I would say the government should look into first their welfare. Because the average Nigerian police that you meet, they will tell you they are not being paid well. The money they are supposed to use to carry out activities, they need mobilization for this, and they will tell you the money is not getting to them. It stops at the top. So for the first thing I would say is the government, or probably the committee in charge of their welfare, should look into their welfare first, and then look into personnel that are into police force. You don't just recruit police force, anybody. Look at their psychology.
It should be a background check.
There should be a thorough interview or thorough check-up on the personality evaluation for the person they are employing. Because you see some police officers on the road, they are drunk, and that's the person holding gun. And you know, apparently, with intoxication, he can do anything. I think there was a case that went viral. Was it 2023 or 2024 December, of a pregnant lawyer that was in a vehicle on the way to church, and she was being shot because the man was drunk. So I think it's beyond them just wearing that uniform. It's beyond just seeing a Nigerian police. But the government should actually take a strong position in recruiting Nigerian police force.
You know, there was a question I asked Dr. Sanusi earlier about whether or not it was by design, because there are many who believe that the current state of the Nigerian police is by design, not designed for the citizens,
so they
but
can
designed by
do the bidding of the political class.
All right, let's bring in one more of our guests right now. Joining us is Chukwuka Osonwa. He's a member of the SARS judicial panel of inquiry from Anambra State. And Anambra State was one of the states that had, aside from Lagos, or even maybe more than Lagos, one of the highest number of complaints. There was a specific police officer whose name was mentioned as well, I believe, as a specific division. And this is 5 years later. Chukwuka, you were a member of that panel. And in 5 years of retrospect with the recommendations, or of course what eventually did come out of the panel, do you think that you were able to get justice and compensation for some people who brought their cases to the Anambra panel?
Thank you for having me. The simple answer is absolutely not. You would recall that at the point during the panel sitting, some of us had to resign. And the simple reason is because the panel became as though it was for show. The Anambra State government, as of then, was majorly interested in the upcoming election. And when we sensed that these findings would be handed over to the now Anambra State governor, who during his campaign showed no interest in implementing the findings of the panel, we had to resign. We had to recuse ourselves. You would also recall that there was a time we went on a long break.
Chukwuka, please hold. Yes, we can. Just hold your comments. We have Bernard Akede standing by with the Commissioner of Police for Lagos State at Lekki Toll Plaza. Let's go to him right now. Technical issues there, but we can promise you that we will bring that interview with our lead correspondent, Bernard Akede, with the Commissioner of Police at the Lekki Toll Plaza to you in subsequent bulletins. Chukwuka, I do apologize for interrupting you, but let's go back to it. One thing, very striking thing you said was that many of you who were part of the panels had to resign because they became like show. Let's pick up from that comment, please.
You recall that in December of 2020, the panel went on holiday break. And as of February, when we resigned from the panel, we were not yet back from the break. So there were no signs. In fact, it was after our resignation that the panel was called back. And this is a panel, like you mentioned, that had 310 petitions before it. So a panel of 310 petitions before it should not be on a very long holiday. So we were not seeing that sign from the government. And true to its character, the Anambra State government, as of then, received the panel findings when it was over and told...
I really apologize for doing this. Just hold your thoughts for a second. We have to take this live comments from the Lagos State Commissioner of Police. Apologies.
Allow any individuals or group to put a slug in the wheel of economic activities in Lagos. You have huge investment of the federal government, the state government, and both international and local investors in Lagos, and this cannot be allowed to be threatened by any misgrunted or misguided individuals that want to take laws into their hands.
So my final question before you go, sir. Part of the demands of the SARS protesters 5 years ago was reform of the police and an improvement in police welfare. How will you say we have fared so far between then and now? And then also the prosecution of the officers that were found culpable of these crimes that they were accused of?
Thank you so much. To a very large extent, there have been a lot of series of reform initiatives that have been carried out by the Inspector General of Police, IGP, Adeleru-Balogun, PhD, MPM, that have been culminated in a lot of welfare improvement for all officers and men of the force. If you can see, even in the turnout of our uniform, you can see how bright we are than what we have in 2020. Even in terms of equipment and the motorized patrol team, you can equally see improvement in our equipment and in the deployment of logistics to protect life and property throughout Lagos State. And I say same throughout the country. So we have fared well and we have improved better under the present leadership of the Nigerian Police Force. The IGP, Adeleru-Balogun, a lot of milestone achievements have been recorded, especially in crime prevention and control, and equally in bridging the gap between the people and the police, because we know that what you have talked about is a misgiving. It comes out of falsehood in the first instance, and people who are enemy of the state capitalize on that falsehood to unleash mayhem, which will not be allowed to happen again. He has equally gone further in training and retraining of officers and men of the force, and equally on human rights training to let them know that we have a lot of responsibility to tell our personnel to conform with the international best practice. Mind you, any organization like the Nigerian Police Force that is subject of public opinion must grapple with the responsibility of constantly reforming and constantly educating our personnel on need not to be personal about issue, on the need not to be sentimental, on the need to always play according to the rule. According to the rule is maintaining the rule of law in all our engagement. So, and that's bring a lot of improvement throughout the country. And in Lagos here, if we can get this level of cooperation from members of the public, a lot of public individuals across Lagos have been coming forward to assist the police in ensuring that we work on the same page to guarantee protection of life and property across the state. Thank you.
I asked them prosecution of the officers.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Can you tell me some of the reform you also introduced to the Lagos State Police Command, sir?
I can. Reform is a force policy. I cannot introduce any reform. Everything that has been introduced by the Inspector General of Police, IGP Adeleru-Balogun, is what we are key into on this directive. But I introduced very degree of crime prevention and control strategies in Lagos when I came on board, part of which is the Coast Strike Force team. Equally, the expansion of the tactical squad from 23 to 33, and equally public engagement. There are constant public engagement with members of the public across board, from the division down to the lower level at the outpost, and upward from division to area command and to my office. So we've continued to have that partnership, and it has been helping us. And mostly the crime situation is very low. Even when I took over, it's not alarming. But we have done a lot to further reduce it to BRS. Our distress call rate time now is less than 5 minutes. The commander RRS is here. They've been on ground. They have a strategic location at Lagos State, the patrol team are stationed to respond to this threat. And when I came with the innovation of the Coast Strike Force team, which to the grace of God and to the appreciation go to the Inspector General of Police, because he equipped the Coast Strike Force team to the teeth. As I'm speaking now, they have 2 armor personnel carriers, and they are an intervention force between the Lagos Island and the Lagos mainland. They are located in Chateau at Surulere, but we moved them now to Shomolu with an edifice as an office. So if there's any flash of incident on the mainland, they move in and clear it and move up. If we have same thing on the island, they quickly do so. So with all this now, it enables us to have a firm grip of crime prevention and control in Lagos State. So I make bold to say that we are doing very, very well, and members of the public have been appreciating us. And we have to extend this to all the nook and cranny of the state. So by and large, it's a good on both ways. Like generally you say win-win for the people and for the police. Thank you.
Okay, lastly, sir, what is the situation around tracker?
Gbenga, go ahead.
Yes, there you have it. The Lagos State Commissioner of Police, CP Olondare Moshood-Jimoh, speaking to members of the press, and of course, News Central correspondent Bernard Akede at the epicenter of the End SARS violence that happened, the incident in 2020, which we're commemorating today. We still have with us Chukwuka Osonwa, member of the End SARS Judicial Panel of Inquiry for Anambra State. And I would like us to bring in Dr. Eri Yimwen Anthony, who is a member of the End SARS Judicial Panel of Inquiry in Edo State. Let's try and see what we can unpack in the less than 20 minutes we have before we wrap up this special broadcast. A quick one, Dr. Anthony, just before we come back to Chukwuka Osonwa, what would you say has happened in the last 5 years with regards to the Edo State Judicial Panel of Inquiry into End SARS?
Dr. Anthony, I think you're muted. Can you check your audio, please?
Mute your device, please?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Eri Anthony Sotope. As regards the Edo State End SARS panel and the outcome, as well as what we have been able to, what changes have come for the past 5 years since the panel ended its primary responsibility, it's hard for me to say nothing, because the panel was so blessed with so many young youths, vibrant comrades, professionals that were so committed to the goal of trying to achieve the primary thing that the panel was about, which is bringing peace and healing to all the age-long assaulted individuals. Very terrible cases that we're seeing in the course of our paneling in the Edo State Judicial Panel of Inquiry on police brutality and related causes. I will say nothing, because if you recall that the primary goal of the End SARS protest, the very basic primary goal was that there should be an outright ban of SARS. Yes, the then IGP of police in October 11, 2020 announced the ban when the pressure was becoming so much. Now, after that announcement, there were still several videos of fresh and recurring events of police brutalizing innocent Nigerians, just going about their own course to see how they can add meanings to the essence of the day. After that event, there were several of it. Now, even after the ban itself, yes, we were happy. But however, you will recall, the essence of the ban is to prevent brutality. SARS was banned, but there was still brutality of the policemen. So the essence of saying, first and foremost, that the ban of the End SARS has achieved something, there was actually nothing there. Now, after the entire process of the End SARS panel, we noticed there was this calm and silence with the government. We regrouped ourselves as comrades of the NSAS panel. We went to meet the government. We wrote to him severally. I was a secretary of that committee. We wrote severally, trying to remind him and draw his attention as to why he needed to comply with the suggestions that we gave. We did severally, met with him, they referred us to the SSG, who was a fantastic man, but the powers were not in his hand for achieving goals, however. The story again came that our findings have not been gazetted, our recommendations have not been gazetted, which for it cannot be implemented, is not yet implementable. We started again, trying to press home our demands through the then PS of Justice Edo State. We did so much, trying to go around. None of it was achieved. Till this day, none of it was achieved.
Dr. Anthony,
sadly.
Let me hold you there because unfortunately we interrupted Chukwuka a bit. Dr. Anthony, just let me hold you there. Chukwuka, you can hear what Dr. Anthony is saying about how the judicial panel of inquiry played out in Edo State. Taiwo is with us and she spoke about the work that Citizens Gavel has done for those who were in Lagos State. I think beyond Lagos, it was a struggle to see actual implementation and effectiveness of these panels. Chukwuka, when you look at that, and we're 5 years down the line, and there are still videos coming online of Nigerian police officers, whether they are SARS or SWAT or whatever you want to call them, still going beyond their remit when it comes to the Nigerian citizen, what do you make of that? Was this just an agreement to get young Nigerians off the streets and finish the protest without any true intention of making any true change or structural reform? Chukwuka.
I personally believe it adds to the long stride of sad history that we have. Clearly, we did not learn from it. Of course, you can see from the protests you're covering today that we clearly did not learn from the 2020 protest. And clearly, over the years, we've seen that the panels that were set up just to play to the gallery. I'll give you an instance. Anambra State government the panel recommended, I think, 699 million naira to be paid to the 300 petitioners. Not to the best of my knowledge, nobody has been paid because the findings were served. So I had the police I had Bernard asking the police officer about the reforms, and he was shying away from it. The Police Act of 2020 is yet to be fully implemented. And I listened to one of your guests mentioning that the recruitment process of these police officers should be looked into. The psychological evaluations should be done. You look at Anambra, where part of the recommendations of the panel was a forensic investigation of the Okozo SARS. What then happened? The Okozo SARS was renamed to RRS and nothing happened. So even as of last month, if you go online, you will see reports from human rights activists with videos of RRS officers from Anambra State harassing victims, of people coming out to say that, oh, they don't know that their family members are there and they don't have access to them. So we just moved on from it and nothing changed. Our findings were solved. So imagine 310 victims telling their chilling stories of either how they were assaulted or how they were victims in one way or the other. And those findings, those stories were served somewhere and was never implemented, not by Governor Willie Obiano and definitely not by Professor Chukwuma Soludo. So it's very sad and we are moving on. So my question actually is 20 years from now, are we going to keep on going with this trauma and this history, knowing that there are people in our history that we should have attended to, that we never attended to, that there are victims who should have been compensated, they were never compensated, that there are stories that should be in museum as a reminder to both the new people joining the police force and the society at large that we cannot go back to being these people, but we don't have that in place, and it's actually very sad.
Dr. Anthony, when we look at all of this, unfortunately, time is not with us. And we mentioned with the executive director of Amnesty International Nigeria, the fact that there have been youth-led demonstrations across the world in recent times that have toppled governments. We've seen the arrests in Nepal, we've seen Madagascar, we've seen Chile, we've seen Peru. And it just feels like the Nigerian government has turned a deaf ear to what young Nigerians and even Nigerians across socioeconomic and age demographics have said. Are there any lessons from other global protests, or have we reached the point where Nigerians no longer believe in the power of protesting? Because right now, today, it seems like many people are not remembering what happened on October 20th, 2020. Our lives have moved on. People seem to have moved on as well. So do we, as Nigerians, do we still believe in the power of protest after the largest youth-led demonstration in the country's history ended up with so many people saying that there has been no progress? Or do we need to take a leaf and start listening, because we've seen where global protest movements, what they call the Gen Z protests, and they say they're contagious, are leading to? Dr. Anthony, very briefly, sir, because of time.
I'll try and be brief as much as I can. Well, Nigeria is a country, as we all know, we do not need to romance the reality. Nigeria don't have what it takes to learn from their past. I think that is the summary. Like the speaker before me just now said, the government was not interested. I think, in my opinion, from what we gathered, it was just a distraction to give a false hope that, oh, now we want to deal with what the issues are. After that, we will now start addressing the problems once the resolutions from each panels of inquiries comes out, which never came to light. In Edo State, when we finished our panel resolutions and arrests, we discovered that the entire bill was running into billions, which was for compensations of all the members of police brutality and related issues. Now, we gathered again, reconverged, and said, no, if we need this bill to be that huge, the government will use it as an excuse, and they will not attend to those resolutions. We came down again, talking about the monetary aspect of the resolution. We came back again, gathered ourselves, we started reducing the compensations for each of the members. At the end of the day, we were able to reduce it down to just millions. Sadly, as small as that is, even the Edo State government vis-a-vis the Nigerian government still did not see any reason to pay attention to those resolutions. Now, in my opinion, for someone who is really interested in healing the people, it would have been an opportunity to even score points. Score a political point for yourself. Score a point. Make these payments for the people. Let them be happy. And let them go around to tell the story. So next time when they see a policeman, they will know how to engage or how to remind themselves on how to live life. None of those considerations were put into thought. Okay. And surprisingly, till this day, it is still not gazetted.
Okay.
So we wasted our time and effort.
Chukwuka, I'll give you the final word because of time. Do you believe that time and effort was wasted on the SARS protest? It's a very powerful statement that Dr. Anthony has just said, but at the end of the day, people came out because they were tired of a certain situation. They protested, they spent days, they donated. Let's not forget the organization that went into keeping the protests going, and all of that. Do you think that at the end of the day, very briefly because of time, that it was a waste? Where do young Nigerians go from there if an issue as critical as that has not seen any progress, even 5 years after? Chukwuka, very briefly.
I do not think it's a waste, and this is coming from somebody who sat on those panels and listened to those horrible stories that came out from victims. I do not think it's a waste, and we are having these conversations thanks to News Central for keeping up the anniversary. We are having these conversations because of that movement. So it will remain in our consciousness. And I want to believe, you reference some of the protests all over the world. I want to believe that there will be a generation, there will be a time where people will look back and on the NSAS protest and be like, this thing has been going on for a while, and we have to do something now. We have to add more efforts, and they will look at where we failed or what's happened, and they will do more from there. So I absolutely do not think it was a waste.
All right, gentlemen, we do apologize. Time is not with us, but we're going to continue to keep our eyes on the developments here in Lagos as well as across the country, particularly Abuja, with the Free Nnamdi Kanu protest. Now, 5 years after the NSARS protest, one question remains. Where do we go from here? The anger was real, the movement was powerful, the message was clear. But 5 years later, many Nigerians still ask, what has really changed? For those who marched, who raised their voices, who believed the moment could transform the system, the hope has dimmed, but it hasn't died. Can protests still work in Nigeria? It's a tough question, because each time young people take to the streets, they risk their safety for a cause that should be simple: justice, fairness, and respect.
Some believe the answer lies in keeping the pressure alive, in speaking truth to power, both online and on the ground. Others say real change must come from within by stepping into the system itself, policing, public service, politics, to reform it from the inside. Whatever the path, one thing is clear: true reform cannot be cosmetic. It's not just about renaming a unit or reshuffling commands. It's about restraining officers to respect human rights. It's about accountability that actually means something. It's about fair pay, better welfare, and leadership that leads by example. But it's also about rebuilding trust, one citizen interaction at a time, because safety isn't only the absence of crime, it's the presence of justice. It's knowing that a young person can walk home at night without fear. I am Gbenga Aborowa. Thanks for being a part of this special broadcast.
And I'm Tolulope. Adeleru-Balogun. The 12 Reports is standing by to give you more news from across Nigeria and beyond. This is News Central.